Number 10. Feeling fine instead of engaged. You don't feel sad. You don't feel happy either. You just feel fine. And that's exactly where the danger starts. This version of fine isn't peace. It's emotional standby mode. It's when life keeps moving, but nothing is really landing. Conversations don't sink in. Moments don't stick. You respond, you nod, you function, but something inside never fully shows up. You're not depressed enough to worry, not fulfilled enough to care. So you keep going, telling yourself this is what adulthood feels like. Stable, neutral, manageable. The problem is, engagement doesn't disappear loudly. It fades quietly. It slips away through small compromises, choosing efficiency over curiosity, comfort over interest, predictability over presence. You stop asking questions that don't have outcomes. You stop leaning into moments unless there's a clear reason. Emotional investment begins to feel unnecessary, even wasteful. Why feel deeply when fine gets the job done? Over time, your nervous system learns this pattern. It learns that intensity is optional, that showing up fully costs energy with no guaranteed return. So it narrows the range. Highs flatten, lows dull. What's left feels calm, but hollow. You mistake this absence of friction for emotional maturity when it's actually emotional distance. This is why fine is so convincing. It doesn't hurt. It doesn't alarm anyone. It lets you perform your life without interruption. But beneath it, something vital is being paused. Engagement isn't excitement. It's contact. It's the subtle electricity of being affected by your own life. When you realize you've been living at arm's length from your own experience, the goal isn't to force happiness. It's to allow impact again, to let moments touch you, even if they're inconvenient. Because feeling truly fine isn't numb neutrality. It's being present enough to feel something real. Number 9. Scrolling without interest. You don't scroll because you're curious anymore. You scroll because your fingers know what to do when nothing else is calling you. At first, scrolling felt like discovery. New ideas, new humor, new perspectives, tiny sparks of novelty that briefly lit up your attention. But slowly, that spark stopped turning into interest. Now it's just motion. Your thumb moves. Your eyes follow, but nothing actually registers. You consume without anticipation, without satisfaction, without memory. When you close the app, you can't name a single thing you saw. It all blends into a gray stream of almost content. This isn't about distraction. It's about emotional buffering. Scrolling becomes a way to avoid the space where feeling might arise. Boredom, restlessness, loneliness, desire, these emotions need stillness to surface. Endless scrolling removes that stillness. It keeps your mind occupied just enough to prevent anything deeper from knocking. Not entertained, just occupied. Your brain adapts to this quickly. It stops expecting meaning from what it sees. Dopamine shifts from reward to regulation. You're no longer looking for something interesting. You're looking for something to pass time without asking anything from you. Interest requires engagement. Engagement requires vulnerability. Scrolling asks nothing, so your system chooses it. Number 8. Eating without noticing taste. You eat, but the moment doesn't register. Food enters your mouth, but the experience never arrives. Meals used to have texture, warmth, smell, anticipation, satisfaction. Now they're background tasks. You chew while thinking about something else. You swallow without noticing flavor. Sometimes you finish eating and realize you don't remember tasting anything at all. Not because the food was bad, but because your awareness wasn't there to receive it. This isn't about appetite. It's about presence. Eating without noticing taste is one of the clearest signs that your attention has learned to live ahead of your body. Your mind stays occupied, planning, worrying, consuming information, while your senses are left unattended. The body experiences life in real time, but the mind has moved on. So sensation fades, not because it's gone, but because no one is listening. Over time, this creates a subtle emotional dullness. Taste is one of the most immediate forms of pleasure we have. When even that becomes muted, your system starts associating daily life with neutrality instead of richness. Not bad, not good, just functional. You feed yourself the way you charge a phone. Necessary, efficient, unremarkable. There's also a deeper layer. Noticing taste requires slowing down. Slowing down allows feeling. And feeling, even pleasant feeling, can feel risky when you've trained yourself to stay regulated at all costs. Enjoyment opens the door to wanting more. Wanting more opens the door to disappointment. So the system chooses safety over sensation. Eventually, this spills beyond food. Music becomes noise. Touch becomes forgettable. Moments lose their edges. You don't starve emotionally, you numb quietly. Relearning taste isn't about mindfulness tricks. It's about allowing yourself to fully arrive in small moments again, without rushing past them. Over time, this trains a subtle emotional habit: disengage before caring. Even when something could spark curiosity, your attention slides past it. You don't pause long enough to feel pulled in. You mistake this for being hard to impress, when it's actually being understimulated at a deeper level. Your emotional muscles aren't exercised. energized. They're bypassed. That's why scrolling without interest feels empty but safe. It keeps emotions neutral, flattened, controlled. But the cost is quiet. You stop noticing what genuinely moves you. Relearning interest doesn't start with better content. It starts with allowing pauses again, letting boredom breathe, giving curiosity time to wake up. Number 7. Losing reaction to good news. Good news reaches you and stops there. No surge, no lift, just acknowledgement. Someone tells you something positive, a win, an opportunity, a moment that should spark relief or excitement. You smile, you say the right words, but inside, nothing really moves. It's not disappointment, it's absence. As if your emotional system received the message but declined to respond. This doesn't mean you're ungrateful. It means your nervous system has learned to stay braced. When life has felt unpredictable for long enough, joy starts to feel unsafe. Good news becomes something to manage, not celebrate. Your mind quietly asks, "What's the catch?" Or, "How long before this changes?" So instead of letting the moment land, you flatten it preemptively. Over time, this becomes a protective reflex. Excitement raises expectations. Expectations create vulnerability. Vulnerability risks emotional whiplash. So your system chooses neutrality. You stay balanced, realistic, grounded. But what you're really doing is keeping your emotional volume low enough that nothing can knock you off center. The danger is subtle. When good news stops registering, motivation weakens. Effort feels disconnected from reward. Achievements feel abstract, like they belong to someone else's life. You keep moving forward, but without momentum, without fuel. You tell yourself you're just more mature now, less reactive, less dramatic. But emotional responsiveness isn't immaturity, it's aliveness. Number 6. Delaying rest indefinitely. You keep telling yourself you'll rest later, after this task, after this phase, after things calm down, but later never arrives. It just keeps moving. Delaying rest indefinitely doesn't look dramatic. It looks responsible. You stay productive. You stay available. You keep functioning past the point where your body is quietly asking for pause. Rest starts to feel like a reward you haven't earned yet, instead of a requirement for staying human. So you push through, convincing yourself that stopping would be inefficient, indulgent, or risky. What's really happening is emotional avoidance disguised as discipline. Rest creates space, and space allows feelings to surface: fatigue, emptiness, frustration, even grief you've been outrunning. By staying busy, you keep those emotions suspended. You're not energized, but you're not forced to feel either. Over time, your system adapts. Exhaustion becomes your baseline. You stop recognizing what rested feels like. So the absence of rest doesn't alarm you anymore. You call it resilience. You call it ambition. But beneath it, your emotional sensitivity dulls. When the body is constantly depleted, it prioritizes survival over richness. Feeling deeply becomes a luxury it can't afford. This is why delayed rest leads to numbness, not just burnout. Without recovery, the nervous system narrows its output. It conserves. It flattens emotional peaks to avoid collapse. You don't feel terrible, you just stop feeling much of anything. Calm, but drained. Stable, but distant. True rest isn't collapse, it's permission. Permission to stop bracing, to let your inner world catch up to your outer pace. Until you allow that pause, numbness will keep masquerading as strength. This numb reaction also reshapes memory. Moments that should anchor your sense of progress fade quickly. You don't carry your wins with you. They don't replenish you. So you keep running on empty, wondering why nothing ever feels like enough. Letting good news affect you again isn't about forcing happiness. It's about allowing impact, letting a moment matter without immediately defending against its loss. Presence isn't instability, it's permission. Number 5. Avoiding excitement to stay stable. You stop yourself right before excitement appears. Not because you don't want it, because you don't trust it. At some point, enthusiasm started to feel dangerous. When you've been overstimulated, overwhelmed, or emotionally burned before, excitement feels like the beginning of loss. The higher the rise, the harder the fall. So you learn to cap it. You tell yourself it's better to stay even, measured, stable. You don't let yourself look forward too much. You don't let hope stretch too far ahead. This looks like maturity on the surface. You're calm. You don't overreact. You don't get carried away. But underneath, it's fear wearing the mask of control. Excitement opens the nervous system. It creates movement, desire, risk. And when your system is already tired, risk feels intolerable. So you preemptively dim the lights. Over time, this avoidance reshapes your emotional identity. You begin to associate excitement with instability, passion with chaos, wanting with weakness. You choose emotional neutrality not because it feels good, but because it feels manageable. You confuse emotional flatness with safety. The cost shows up quietly. Life loses texture. You stop feeling pulled toward things. Decisions are made based on what won't disrupt you, not what might fulfill you. Even positive anticipation feels like something to suppress. You stay balanced, but untouched. Avoiding excitement doesn't protect stability, it erodes meaning. Stability isn't the absence of peaks, it's the ability to experience them without collapsing. When you allow excitement again, gently, without over-identifying with it, you reclaim your capacity to feel alive without losing yourself. Number 4. Treating emotions as distractions. You start treating emotions like interruptions, something that gets in the way of efficiency. A feeling rises, sadness, joy, irritation, longing, and your first instinct is to manage it, not experience it. You ask how to reduce it, delay it, reframe it, or push it aside so you can keep going. Emotions become problems to solve instead of signals to listen to. You don't ask, what is this telling me? You ask, how do I get past this quickly? This mindset doesn't come from coldness. It comes from overload. When life demands constant output, emotions feel inconvenient. They slow decision-making. They complicate focus. So your system learns to suppress them in the name of productivity. You tell yourself you'll feel later, after work, after responsibilities, after everything is handled. But later rarely comes. Over time, this creates emotional fragmentation. You're still having feelings, but you're no longer integrated with them. They exist in the background, unprocessed, leaking out as fatigue, irritation, or numbness. By refusing to pause for emotions, you don't eliminate them. You mute your awareness of them. This is how numbness forms, not from lack of feeling, but from chronic dismissal. When emotions are repeatedly treated as distractions, the nervous system learns not to surface them clearly anymore. Why signal if no one listens? So feelings arrive dulled, vague, or delayed. Ironically, emotions are what keep focus sustainable. They provide meaning, motivation, orientation. When you exile them, life becomes mechanical. Tasks get done, but nothing feels connected. Reintegrating emotion isn't about indulgence. It's about coherence, letting feelings inform your life instead of interrupt it. Number 3. Replacing feelings with routines. Your days start to run on autopilot, not because routines help you, because they replace something you stopped feeling. At first, routines are support structures. They reduce decision fatigue. They create order. But slowly, something shifts. You stop using routines to hold your life together and start using them to avoid engaging with it. Wake up, work, eat, scroll, sleep, repeat. Everything flows smoothly, efficiently, emotionally untouched. This is how feelings get replaced. Instead of checking in with your inner state, you follow the schedule. Instead of asking what you need, you execute what's next. Routines become emotional shortcuts, ways to move through the day without asking difficult questions. You don't notice how you feel, you just know what time it is. The nervous system likes this at first. Predictability feels safe. There are fewer surprises, fewer spikes, fewer disruptions. But emotional life doesn't disappear. It gets bypassed. When feelings don't have a place to surface, they lose clarity. You're not sad or happy. You're just busy, not anxious or calm. You're just on task. Over time, this creates a hollow efficiency. Life becomes smooth, but thin. You function well, but feel oddly disconnected from your own days. Time passes quickly, yet nothing stands out. Weeks blur together because routines don't generate memory. They generate repetition. The danger isn't routine itself. It's using routine as a substitute for presence. When structure replaces feeling entirely, numbness follows naturally. Reintroducing emotion doesn't mean abandoning order. It means letting routines serve you again, not silence you. Letting moments interrupt the schedule. Letting yourself feel, even when it's inconvenient. Number 2. Avoiding intensity altogether. You start avoiding intensity altogether. Not just pain, everything that might shake you. You curate your life to stay within a narrow emotional range. No extreme opinions, no deep confrontations, no art that lingers too long, no conversations that might open something you can't immediately close. Intensity begins to feel like a threat, not an experience. So you flatten your environment to match your inner state. Soft edges, low volume, minimal friction. This avoidance feels peaceful at first. Fewer spikes, fewer crashes. You tell yourself you're protecting your mental health, but what you're really doing is shrinking your capacity to feel. Intensity isn't the enemy, it's the amplifier. It's what gives contrast to experience. Without it, emotions lose definition. Joy without depth feels shallow. Sadness without depth feels vague. Everything turns gray. The nervous system adapts fast. When intensity is consistently avoided, your tolerance for it drops. Even small emotional waves begin to feel overwhelming. So you avoid them too. You stop watching things that move you. Stop listening to music that stirs you. Stop engaging with ideas that challenge you. You don't feel safer. You feel quieter. This is where numbness settles in comfortably, not as pain, but as absence. Life feels controlled, but also distant. You're no longer afraid of emotional highs or lows. You just don't access them. You mistake this for calm when it's actually disconnection. Intensity isn't chaos. It's information. It tells you what matters, what hurts, what excites, what deserves attention. When you allow it back, slowly, consciously, you don't lose control. You regain meaning. Feeling deeply isn't instability, it's participation. Number 1. Mistaking calm for emptiness. You tell yourself you're calm now, centered, unbothered, finally balanced. But something feels off, and you can't name it. Mistaking calm for emptiness is the final trick numbness plays. Real calm has weight, it has presence. It feels grounded, alert, quietly alive. Emptiness feels similar on the surface, but underneath there's nothing responding. No pull, no resonance, no inner movement. You're not overwhelmed anymore, but you're not engaged either. This confusion happens because your system has learned to shut down intensity so well that silence feels normal. After prolonged emotional suppression, the absence of disturbance feels like peace. You stop asking whether you feel good and settle for not feeling bad. That becomes the benchmark. And because there's no obvious pain, you assume nothing is wrong. But emptiness isn't neutrality, it's disconnection. Calm allows experience to flow without resistance. Emptiness blocks experience from arriving at all. In calm, you can still be moved. In emptiness, nothing reaches you. The world passes by without friction, without imprint. The danger is subtle but profound. When emptiness is mislabeled as calm, there's no motivation to change. Why fix what isn't hurting? So numbness becomes permanent. You adapt to a life where nothing deeply matters and you call it stability. But meaning doesn't come from balance alone. It comes from contact, from being affected. Relearning the difference takes honesty. Asking not, am I calm, but am I connected? Not, am I stable, but am I alive to my own experience? Calm can hold feeling. Emptiness avoids it. The moment you notice the difference, numbness loses its disguise. And that awareness, quiet, unsettling, real, is the first sign that feeling is already returning.